In the crisp spring of 2025, Canada found itself under the stewardship of a new leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, a man of economic renown, once the steady hand guiding the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England through turbulent times. Elected on a promise of fiscal discipline and a very different approach to governance, Carney stepped into Ottawa's spotlight with a bold, unexpected twist. No federal budget until the fall. The announcement, delivered by Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne in May 2025, sent ripples through the nation, from the bustling streets of Toronto to the windswept prairies of Saskatchewan. Canadians, accustomed to the annual spring ritual of a budget unveiling, whispered in coffee shops and town halls, wondering what this delay might mean. As the seasons turned, the absence of a fiscal roadmap began to weave a tale of unintended consequences, a story of uncertainty, missed opportunities, and a nation teetering on the edge of chaos. The sun shone brightly on May 13, 2025, as Carney took the oath at Rideau Hall, his cabinet buzzing with fresh faces and ambitious pledges. A middle-class tax cut, a housing boom, and a defense ramp-up to meet NATO's 2% GDP target filled his campaign rhetoric. Yet when Champagne stepped to the podium days later, he declared no spring budget would come. Step 1, a tax cut. Step 2, a throne speech. Step 3, a fall economic update, he said, dodging a full fiscal plan. Carney, speaking from Rome on May 18th, doubled down. There's not much value in rushing a budget in 3 weeks with a new cabinet. A fall budget, he promised, would be comprehensive, effective, ambitious, prudent. But as summer loomed, the lack of a clear financial blueprint cast a shadow, and the unintended ripples began to spread. First came the fog of uncertainty. Businesses, from Vancouver's tech startups to Halifax's fishing fleets, craved clarity. Without a budget, they couldn't gauge tax policies, infrastructure investments, or trade supports. In Calgary, an oil executive paced his office, unsure if Carney's energy superpower vision meant new pipelines or green tech subsidies. A Toronto developer, eyeing the Build Canada Homes pledge, froze plans for a 500-unit complex. Would funding or GST cuts on new homes materialize? The delay, meant to buy time for a meticulous plan, instead stalled decisions, investment waned, and growth sputtered. The Fraser Institute warned of a $62.3 billion deficit for 2025-26, up from Trudeau's $42.2 billion, with no roadmap to curb it. Markets twitched, and Canada's borrowing costs crept up, as financial analysts like those at Scotiabank noted a minority government is shaky footing in a turbulent global landscape. Citizens felt the pinch too. In Winnipeg, single mother Jenna clutched her grocery list, hoping the promised tax cuts lated for July 1 would ease her $1,400 monthly burden. But without a budget, doubts lingered. Would it pass a hung parliament? The throne speech on May 27th outlined grand goals: affordable housing, trade barriers lifted, defense bolstered, but no numbers backed them. In rural Quebec, farmer Pierre worried about fuel costs and trade tariffs from a combative U.S. under President Trump. Carney's team touted counter-tariffs and a CUSMA renegotiation, but with no budget, how would aid reach trade-hit workers? Food bank lines grew, and household debt, already strained from Trudeau's era, ticked higher. Ex-posts buzzed with frustration. Carney promised a plan, not a pause. Budget or bust, cried at Mark Nixon 24. Then came the governance snag. A minority Liberal government with 169 seats to the Conservatives' 144 needed allies for every vote. The tax cut, introduced via a Ways and Means motion, teetered as the NDP and Bloc wavered. Without a budget to frame it, opposition leader Andrew Scheer pounced in question period on May 28th. If he is the man with the plan, why no budget before summer vacation? Carney shot back, citing Poilievre's vague 100-day plan, but the delay fueled distrust. Conservatives decried reckless spending for $869 billion projected per Atlas Linuis with no fiscal anchor. Parliament, back for a tight 3 weeks it, grappled with supply votes to keep funds flowing, but the absence of a cohesive plan left MPs guessing. A recession loomed, and with no budget, Carney's fiscal levers to boost demand sat idle, risking a deeper slump. The global stage added peril. Trump's tariffs battered Canada's exports, and his 5% NATO defense demand loomed. Carney vowed to hit 2% by 2030, with $18 billion over 4 years, but without a budget, allies questioned Canada's resolve. At the G7 in Kananaskis, Champaign and Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem faced scrutiny. How would Canada fund sovereignty and security? The Golden Dome missile shield idea floated, but with no fiscal clarity, negotiations faltered. Back home, young Canadians like 16-year-old Mia in Edmonton fretted. The Fraser Institute pegged her lifetime tax bill at $29,663 extra from past debt. Carney's $62.3 billion deficit and $225 billion debt hike over 4 years promised more. Services, health, schools risked cuts as debt servicing soared. Summer faded and whispers of fall grew urgent. Would Carney's ambitious, prudent budget deliver, or had the delay sown chaos? Flexibility was lost to indecision, outcomes blurred without a plan, and risks mounted. Financial overextension loomed, borrowing costs up, growth down, faith shaken. In this tale, Carney, the crisis manager, faced a plot twist. A nation adrift, citizens anxious, and a fall budget racing against a ticking clock. The moral? A budget delayed might steady a cabinet, but it rattles a country. Hashtag Canada, hashtag no budget, hashtag fiscal tail, hashtag Carney chaos, hashtag DrakeMemeo.